Hello and welcome to the Eagle Insights podcast. I'm your host, Communications Coordinator Henry Conti with the Bellbrook-Sugarcreek Local School District. Thanks for joining us today. We have Ken Moyer, a math teacher and football coach, though he is stepping away as coach for the next few years because he wants to watch his daughter play her last 2 years of collegiate volleyball. We talked to him about his NFL career as a lineman for the Cincinnati Bengals, his second career as a chaplain for the Bengals and Reds, and now his third career as a teacher and coach. To say this was an interesting conversation is such an understatement. Please enjoy. I know you will. Cue the Eagle. Ken, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I've had a couple conversations with you in the past, and I've really enjoyed them, thinking specifically about the volleyball game we attended this fall. And you told me a little bit about your kids, and I want to get into that, but I think we have to start with the football of it all. Played, is it 5 years with the Bengals?
Yeah, so mine's a weird story. I was 6 years on the roster of the Bengals. 1 year was non-football related injury. So I was with the team for 6 years, and then I was with the Eagles for my 7th year, and that's where I ended up having a career-ending injury and had to retire. So I was actually only in uniform for the Eagles for one game. It was a preseason game, but so I would not be on their official roster, but the way I count it, we were there 7 years. I went through 7 training camps, if that makes sense.
That's fair. What was the injury?
So essentially I had two things in my shoulder. Degenerative arthritis in my shoulder is essentially what it was. They basically said if you can imagine a golfer's divot that he takes out of the sand, out of the fairway, the surface of my shoulder had many, many divots to where the hard outer shell of the bone was gone and only the soft marrow was exposed. And so it was interesting the way the doc told me. He said, you can keep playing if you want to, you just won't be able to use your arm when you're done. Yeah. And I'm like, I like my arm, so I think I'll hang it up. You start to notice it when you're working on cars or if I'm even putting dishes up on the stage. Whenever I raise my arm up above my shoulder, it really starts to become painful and weak. So, we'll see. It's my test is always if it's causing me to lose sleep, then it's time to do something about it. And I can pretty much take most pain during the waking hours, but it's starting to cause me to lose sleep. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have another replacement before too long.
You grew up in California, so there's probably not a love for the Bengals coming into that there would be for the people who are here, but I'm guessing you probably do now.
Yeah, so actually I was born in California, but I only lived there for 4 years. We moved out here to the Midwest to this suburb of Toledo, Ohio, but it was actually in Michigan, Bedford, Michigan, when I was 4, so in like 1970. We grew up Rams fans, and and those were the Los Angeles Rams back then, and they're back to being the Los Angeles Rams. That was really my only allegiance. Then I went to college, and I went to the University of Toledo. About half of the students at the University of Toledo are from the Cleveland area, so I actually started to become a Browns fan. Okay. And that was during the days of the Cardiac Kids and Pride and Sipe, and just some great years and fun ways to do it. But when you play football for a living, your favorite team becomes the one that pays your bills, right? Yeah, and signs your checks. And so I was tickled pink because it was interesting. I really had 3 different offers. I was undrafted, and so I had 3 teams that wanted to get me going. One was the New York Giants, one was the New Orleans Saints, and the Bengals. Yeah. And I remember the Saints and the Bengals were really the top 2. The Giants wanted me, but it wasn't that bad. And so I'll never forget being from a smaller school. Toledo was a smaller school. I knew I had a long shot to make it. And so as I was looking at the rosters, the Bengals had just come off a Super Bowl. And the Saints had a weak offensive line. And so I really thought my best chance was to go to the Saints. But the Bengals had this guy named Anthony Munoz, who was a Hall of Fame, the best ever. And I, at that time, had just become a follower of Jesus. And so I knew he was too. And I wanted to learn how I could mix that with football. Okay. And so I wanted to go to the Saints. I wanted to go to the Bengals, but I was like, I got to go to the Saints. And so my agent finally called me, and he was like, all right, Ken, here's our offers. They're both offering the same thing. I need an answer within an hour. And I'm thinking, I'm a 21-year-old kid. I don't know how to make these decisions, right? Yeah. And so literally I just sat down and I said a quick 5-second prayer. God, I don't know. Just make the decision for me. And I said, I don't even know. And I stopped thinking about it. And literally within 5 minutes the phone rang, and my agent called me again. He said, Ken, I just got off the phone with the Saints, and they want you to come down right away, and you won't be able to graduate from college, so you need to sign with the Bengals. I was like, thank you. So I was really excited because I got to learn from the feet of one of the best ever. And he was a great player, and I was fortunate enough that he took me under his wing, and he got to share with me how to be a professional, how to train your body, how to study films, how to practice, how to take care of your body with the pounding and the rigor. So I was really blessed. And my parents got to come see me play. They're still living in Toledo. And so, if I would have gone to New Orleans, they wouldn't have gotten to see me play. And so it kept me in the Midwest. And as much as I love the idea of living in California, I always said I wanted to go back. My trips back there since have cemented the fact that I'd rather live here. This is a great part of the country, a great part of the world.
So you go from undrafted to playing with the Bengals, coming off a Super Bowl appearance. No starts, but you play in 8 games your first year. You start all 16 your second year. 10 starts, 14 starts. For the people that don't know, that is very good for an offensive lineman. Starting 16 games your second season is incredible from an undrafted perspective.
Yeah, and I'd love to say that was because I was so good, but the reality is that's because everybody else got hurt, right? And so I was, if I want to honestly, objectively evaluate my talent, I was one of those players that was good enough to play, but bad enough that they were always trying to find somebody better than me, right?
All right, that's right.
And so I was good enough to make the team, good enough to start, but I was always the first guy they were going to try to replace. So my first year, it was interesting. This was the most grueling year ever. So my second year in the league, right? I mean, the first year, I'm just wet behind the ears. I don't even know what's going on. Yeah. I get thrown into a game. I literally thought the entire team would have to die in a plane crash before I'd play, right? And I find out it only took one guy. And so I remember my grandfather's funeral was on a Saturday, and that Sunday our starting center broke a bone in his back, like one of the little wing bones. And so I had to play. I'm like, I hadn't gotten any sleep. But it was fun. I got to play, and I played like spot duty that rest of that year. But that second year now, if you think about it, I played every play but the first 6 plays. Our starting right guard got hurt the 6th play of the first preseason game. And so I played every snap but 6 in 22 football games.
That's incredible.
Oh, my goodness. I was so tired by the end of it. In college, you play 11 games plus a bowl game if you're lucky, right? Because I was the youngest guy, they never took me out. If we were winning by a lot or losing by a lot, I was always in there.
You got fresh legs, sure.
Yeah, they'd spell the old guys and the veterans, and so I was so doggone tired. I remember riding out on an airplane. We were playing the Raiders with Bo Jackson and those guys. We were going to play them in a playoff game, and it was the AFC Divisional Championship game. And we'd won our first playoff game, and we're going on the second one, and I'm like, I'm so tired. I hope we win, but if we lose, at least I get to rest.
I'm going to be okay to sleep for a couple weeks, yeah?
I mean, literally, I'm like, I don't think I'll get out of bed for like 2 weeks. And so, it was a great experience. I loved playing that much. And then, the next few years, they basically would always try to find somebody to replace me, but I would always find my way back up in the lineup, sometimes because of injury, sometimes because I beat the guys they brought in out.
Yeah.
And so I was really blessed to have a great career where I got to play a lot of football, have a lot of fun, make some great memories. And I think I played 7 years, and I got out of it without too many long-term physical effects, right? And so I am blessed beyond what I deserve. It was a great experience.
Yeah. But the football bug clearly never left. You coached. Have you been coaching basically since then, or did you take a couple years?
So this is interesting. I chose this year to step away from coaching football because my daughter's playing volleyball in college, and the seasons are at the same time, and she's got 2 years left, and I want to be able to watch them. I'd find myself during our Bellbrook games feeling like I should be watching my daughter playing instead of watching our game, and so I didn't want to feel conflicted. So this will be the first year since I was 12 years old that I haven't had a football season.
Wow.
So my career is kind of interesting. I've had 3 different careers. First one was in the NFL, and then I transitioned into being the chaplain for the Bengals and the Reds.
All right.
And so I became, for 16 years, I served in that capacity and was involved in helping them, and it was mostly helping them spiritual growth, but sometimes helping them with on the field stuff. And I was in the coach's box during the games and pulling prints, but before they could look at them on iPads.
Yeah. Back when they were printing out the photos and you were looking.
Yeah, those were the rules, right? Because you had to print out two pictures for each play, and that was all you got. So I did that for 16 years, and then we sensed the leading to change. Back in 1992, I was playing with the Bengals, and I thought that it was going to be one of 2 career paths when I was done, either going in the ministry full-time or teaching and coaching. And so I was hurt, had a year where I couldn't do anything football-wise, but couldn't do rehab. It was kind of weird. And so they let me go back to school. So I went to Cincinnati to get a teaching certificate. always wanted to explore the opportunity to be a teacher and a coach. And so back in 2012, I got the opportunity to be a teacher. I taught math at Oak Hills High School, a school in Cincinnati. My first coaching job. Now, I'd coached my sons in youth football. And it was funny, the parents used to tease me because I'd run them like an NFL practice. Not the intensity, but the organization. We'd have individual periods and interior periods, and there's like, oh, this is crazy. I'd send my parents to scout the other team, and we'd watch video, and I'd have play cards drawn up of their offense, their defense. Yep. That's all I know, right?
Right, yeah. I
was at Oak Hills for 2 years, and I told him I want to be the offensive line coach, and he was like, sure, we'll have you. And he was trying to recruit a coordinator, and that coordinator never panned out. So about the middle of June, he says, Ken, how about you be my coordinator? I'm like, my first job at high school football as an offensive coordinator. Right. So we did okay. I wish I'd have known some things then like I know now, because we had great talent at quarterback and running back, and I would have used them a little bit differently. But that's all right. Spent 2 years as the offensive coordinator in the GMC, which is Cincinnati's version of the GWAC, right? And then became a head coach. Spent 7 years at Dayton Christian. Took a year in the Netherlands and was the head coach at Valley View.
Yep.
And that was an interesting experience. And then all that led me to, I've said a number of times, Valley View not renewing my contract is probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it gave me the opportunity to come here and work with Jeff, who's a great head coach and a wonderful man, and he does such great things for our kids in our school. It'll be interesting. This will be my first year without a football season, so I'm all right with it now, but talk to me in September or October, and we'll see. I can, in my head, say I'm 100% behind the decision because I want to go see my daughter play, and we got 2 more years left, but it'll be interesting to see a season without football.
Well, I'm guessing if she's got an off week, you might be on the field at Bellbrook.
I'll be around.
So I didn't realize this middle job, if you will, being chaplain. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like you said, you had come to don't remember the words you used, but you'd come to your religious experience just as you were entering pros, and wanted to be with Anthony Munoz, knowing he was following the same path you are. So how does that kind of, while you're playing, how does that continue to develop so that, all of a sudden now your playing days are over and you're able to just kind of go right into that position?
So during my time in the NFL, I always look back at my time at Toledo and say that was incredibly formative, right? I learned so much. I've got a degree in engineering, and so I learned academically, I learned athletically. I changed my body and learned how to work, and I grew spiritually. That was the first time I really took my faith seriously. But it was really my time in the NFL, and there was really 2 primary people that helped me. One was a guy named Wendell Deo. He was our chaplain. And see, because we play on Sundays, and we have team responsibilities from essentially 8:30 in the morning on Sunday until 7 at night, there's really no opportunities for players that want to go to church. So most teams in the NFL will have a chapel service, and that'll either be Saturday night or Sunday morning. So Wendell did that for us. And Wendell gave me a vision for, hey, I can use the platform that I have as an athlete to impact positively our community. And so we actually went to hundreds of different schools and spoke with a platform of, hey, let's try to avoid some of the mistakes that are out there for kids. So we did a drug and alcohol awareness and abstinence program in hundreds of high schools, and we'd go and devote, I think we'd do 30 a year. And I did that for probably 4 years. We might have even done more than 30. We'd do 3 a day, 2 days out of the week for about 6 weeks. So I'd have a math teacher. I'd have to figure out those numbers. But I began to see the impact that we can have on people by just using our influence. Yeah. And then the second thing that I saw was my current wife and I, we started dating. And we had some interesting challenges, right, relationally. We were young kids, but we were both older, and we were kind of set in our ways. And I'll never forget, now we had transitioned to another chaplain. His name was Jeff Patton, and Jeff and Jenna, they took us under their wing, and they began to show us how we could have a good, healthy relationship that was based on sound principles. And I remember driving, yelling, screaming at each other, and we're trying to figure out if we can be married or not. I can't even stand you. How am I going to marry you? And their door was always open to us, and they pulled us in and they calmed us down, and they helped us to be able to think a little bit more calmly and rationally, listen to each other, what they're doing, and live kind of in a more selfless relationship, which is one of the things I believe is key to having a healthy relationship, is to be a little more focused on the other person than yourself. And so I saw the impact that it had on me and my wife. It was an incredible impact. I consider myself so lucky to have somebody there who was devoted to helping us to grow spiritually. That when I was offered an opportunity, when my career was over, to do the same for others, I was like, well, I get to reach out to my community. I get to help other football players that are going through the same thing. Now I got to take a little bit of a pay cut, and that's okay. I can live with that. But it was a wonderful 16 years, a great time with my family, a great place to raise my family. You know, we saw marriages restored. We saw people helped off of drugs. We saw people renewed their faith. And we tried our best to be a positive influence on the community. You know, nobody's perfect, and football players aren't perfect, and we make mistakes, and I've made mistakes, but I experienced the benefits of it, and so it was an honor to give back, right? I figured, I want to be the blessing to others that I received when I was going through the league. And it was easier for me than most, because most of the chaplains didn't have an NFL background at that time. Most of them were like pastors. But because I'd played in the league, people would trust me a little bit more and know that I wasn't there for the wrong reasons, but I was there for the right reasons, and so it was really a wonderful experience.
So then you said you kind of knew education was in your future, but can you talk to me about that transition now?
Yeah, so that was interesting, right? So my background's weird, right? So I mean, literally,
it's varied. We'll go with varied.
Yeah, varied. That's a politically correct way to say it. I have a degree in electrical engineering, and I've always loved that. I've done broadcasting, and I've been told by people that I could be a professional broadcaster. And so I spent 23 years with the Bengals, and it became apparent to me that it was time to move.
Yeah.
Carrie and I, my wife, we just had a mantra that it was like, hey, we'll leave no stone unturned. We'll go through any door that's opened. And so I evaluated coaching in college. I evaluated coaching in pros. I don't think I had much of an opportunity there, but evaluated engineering jobs, evaluated broadcasting jobs, and evaluated teaching and coaching. And so we cast a wide net. And the amazing thing was this was pretty cool. Just shaking the bushes, applying for head coaching jobs. Like I think I can get a head coaching job as my first job, which is just stupid, but that's all right. I was too dumb to know what I didn't know.
Like high school level? Or
high school level.
Okay.
I'm going, I could see myself enjoying that. I'd like that. And the reality is, the life in the NFL, I mean, I went 23 years without having Christmas or Thanksgiving. I was always working during those times. Right now we'd have a Thanksgiving Day celebration and we'd have a Christmas celebration, but I was one day and I was working, and I'd miss the weekends with my kids because I was gone on Saturdays and Sundays. And so I was my heart was yearning for an opportunity to be around at a more regular schedule. And I thought high school would offer me that opportunity. I am just applying for jobs, and I applied for this one job called New Richmond.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, the New Richmond job was open. It was funny, their athletic director called me and said, didn't even call me. He just said, something to the effect of, why would we hire you? I was like, oh, thank you. But it got me thinking, why did the guy leave? What happened to the guy at New Richmond? And he took the head coaching job at Oak Hills.
Okay.
And so I said, well, okay, he's a new coach, and may need coaches. And so I called him, and I was like, hey, would you be interested in, interviewing me for one of your spots? He's like, you don't remember me? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, should I? He's like, oh yeah, well, when you were playing in the NFL, I used to have you come. We used to do chapel for the Coleraine Cardinals, and Kerry Combs was the head coach, and this guy Dan Schultz was one of the assistant coaches, and he was the guy that met me and ushered me into the team and talking. So he had known me, and I'm like, well, what a connection, right?
Yeah.
And he needed an offensive line coach, and then I said, well, I got to make a living, so I got to get a teaching certificate. And what I found out was, because of that year that I'd spent in master's level education courses, and because the math that I took in my engineering courses, I was able to get a teaching certificate essentially by passing a content knowledge, they call it a praxis test, and then by signing up for this alternate resident educator's license. And I had to commit to more coursework, and I've completed that and all that. But I was able to, with the passing of one test, get a temporary certificate on that pathway. And so I'm like, oh my goodness! And so all the doors opened up, and there were a math opening that happened at Oak Hills, and I was trying to get, I was beating the bushes everywhere, but that door opened, and so we transitioned. It was a great time. I learned so much. I loved Oak Hill, some great people. Then you start the coaching path, and it takes you where it takes you, right? Yeah. And you're kind of at its whim sometimes, but my goal was always to use coaching to end up at a great teaching spot, and I feel like I've threaded the needle and landed at a wonderful spot where I could teach for the rest of my career and be content with great community, great students, and an unbelievable team of people, both in my math department and our administration that we work with, that I love coming to work with. So it's not without its challenges, right? But it's a great place to work.
What has it always been the high school level that you've taught and wanted to teach, or a little difficult with younger?
My license is a little different, right? I've told people what my license is, and I've had principals tell me there is no license, and I'm like, well, let me show you. There is. I'm licensed 4 to 12 for math, integrated math. I'm not sure that I got the patience to deal with middle schoolers, right? Elementary school, you throw me in a 4th grade math class, you might as well just send me to the funny farm, because I don't know how long I'll last. That's not my. So I've always related to the high school age students. My best friend in college, my best friend and roommate for a number of years, has always told me, Ken, I've always seen you working with high school students. That's your wheelhouse. My wife and I met working with a youth group of high school students. It's just always been my passion. It's interesting as you age, the stories that you relate to aren't the same stories that they relate to anymore. So, but hopefully I'm able to. They keep me young and they tell me their stories, and hopefully I can relate to them through some common experiences. But I think if you're humble and you treat the students like adults, then they respect that and they'll respond to you. And so hopefully I've done a good job of that with my students.
Talk to me a little bit, if you will, about your kids.
You got 4.
You have 4. Okay.
Yeah. So I got a house full. So well, not a house full anymore. Yeah. It's interesting because last year was our first year as empty nesters. My wife Carrie, we've been married since 1995. And so we'll be 29 this year in June. We've been blessed to have 4 kids. Our oldest, Megan, she's married to her wonderful husband, Josh Clabbers, and they got married, it will be 2 years ago this coming May. She's a rock star. We've been blessed with all our kids. My favorite line from my kids is my son, Josh. He says, Mom and Dad, I'm so disappointed we'll never be like you. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, we'll never have as great a kids as you have. And okay, all right, well, that's fine. That's my son. But we feel that way. We've been blessed with great kids. So Megan, she's one of those kids where she's a rock star. She's never had a B in her life. Graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a master's and a chemical engineering degree in 5 years, where a typical chemical engineering degree takes 5 years there. And so she's working at Dow Chemical. Her husband's an aeronautical engineer at GE Aircraft Engines, and so
a lot of brain power in that family.
There's a lot of brain power in that family. Oh my goodness! And so they live down in Cincinnati, and we get to see them on a fairly regular basis. My oldest son, David, just got married this past May to a school teacher. This is an interesting story. I tell this story all the time, but her name's Allie, and back when I was looking for a job to come here, I was applying in places, and we both applied to the Kettering Fairmont job, and I actually turned her on to it, and she got the job, and I didn't even get the interview, and so I tease her about it all the time. You're a better teacher than I am, and so they're wonderful young people. David graduated from Miami with a finance degree, and he's working at UBS with some wealth management, one of the teams over right off of Austin Landing, and Allie, his wife, teaches at Fairmont, teaches math. Joshua, my youngest son, he's studying chemical engineering at University of Cincinnati. Came back from a co-op with Dow in Texas and is now finishing up this semester, and he'll go off to Midland, Michigan for his next co-op. University of Cincinnati does a wonderful job with their co-op programs. And so he's plugging his way through organic chemistry and oh my goodness, he tells me transport and material, and I'm just going, oh my goodness, I'm an electrical engineer, but I couldn't handle organic chemistry. I couldn't even handle regular chemistry, so I'm sorry. So he's just plugging his way through school, and he loves to play a game called Magic. It's a card game, and he competes and has traveled all over the country doing that, and he's really good at it. And then my youngest is Caroline. She's 20. She just turned 20 Saturday, and she's a volleyball player, and I'm a volleyball dad. It's fun. So she's playing college volleyball down at Alabama Huntsville, which is a Division II school in the Gulf South Conference, and it's a great it's been a great experience for her. She loves her teammates. She loves her school. It's big enough to where she gets a lot of people, but small enough to where she's known, and it's close enough, but it's far enough away that I feel like it's that great balance where when she's gone, she loves being there, but she's ready to come home when she's come home, but it's not so far away that she's homesick. And so it's been fun to watch her grow and mature, and so we've been blessed to have 4 just wonderful kids, and now we got 6 with our in-laws, and the next question is when we're going to have grandkids. And I started thinking about bribing them. We'll buy a car for the first grandkid, and then they're like, "Nah, they got time. They got plenty of time before they have kids."
All right, so what is your favorite food? It can be anything.
I'd have to say Grater's peanut butter chip ice cream.
All right. I can get there with that. What's your favorite drink?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. See, my second favorite food is every other food.
Gotcha.
And so I try not to drink my calories
Gotcha.
because I eat them. So, I guess my favorite food, I like a root beer. My favorite drink, I like a root beer float.
Oh, okay. All right. What is, speaking of kids keeping you young, what is your go-to emoji when you text?
Oh, I'm so old. I just used the colon parentheses. That's the extent of my emojis.
Gotcha.
Occasionally now and then I'll use a turd just to keep it real, but that's it.
Gotcha. What is what's the favorite movie or TV show? It can be what you're into now. It can be the go-to.
My favorite movie of all time is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Return of the King is the best one, but there are so many unbelievable ones out there now. Lots of close seconds, but there's one called The Shack that I really like. There's then there's the ones that we quote classically, right? We were watching Tommy Boy the other day. Just yesterday we were watching Tommy Boy. So this is what makes me sad is I'm quoting Blues Brothers to my students, and they're looking at me going, "What? Who?
Yeah.
What are the Blues Brothers?" I'm like, okay. So it's stuff like that. The Princess Bride is another great one.
Just watched that again last week. So
one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah. And do you have a quote that you kind of keeps you grounded or something you go back to?
I really think of one of the scriptures. It meant the most to me my entire life. I remember running through my mind when I was in training camp with the Bengals when I was going to get cut. And it's basically, let's throw aside everything that encumbers us or entangles us, and let's run the race with perseverance that's laid out for us. And when we get weary, let's not forget the one who ran the race for us. And it's essentially a quote from the book of Hebrews that talks about Jesus' perseverance that he displayed for us. And so when I lose heart, to consider all that he went through so that I could continue to go through and be selfless as well the way he was. So that's constantly running through my mind. I try really hard to treat people with respect. The thought that goes through me is just please let me see people for who they are and how God sees them, and not for the trouble that they may cause, or not for the challenge that they may be, or not for how they present themselves, but to see them as they really are, incredibly valuable children of God. And so that's what I try to focus my mind on.
And then the last one, and you can apply this one's a little bit more difficult to maybe apply to you because you've had such a varied career. And I'm not trying to be politically correct there, but you're an NFL player, you're a chaplain, you're a teacher. Those things don't really connect unless they're through you. But if you could go back and talk to yourself, whether it's at the beginning of your NFL career, your career as a chaplain, your career as a teacher, what would you tell yourself, and would you listen?
Wow, that's a deep one. Okay. If I would go back and talk to myself.
But you got to tell me which career, because we got some.
I'll say, am I allowed to say two?
Sure.
Okay.
There's no rules on my podcast.
All right, so the first one relates to coaching, right? Yeah. And to coach, you have to be a certain kind of way. You have to set high expectations. You have to get people to follow those expectations even when they don't want to. And because of your position of authority, you can dictate that they do it with some strong tactics, right? Yeah. I started to carry that into how I treated my kids. And I was so grateful that my wife kind of pulled me aside and says, "Ken, we don't need you to be a coach here. We need you to be a dad." And so I would hopefully tell myself that sooner, so that she wouldn't have had to tell it to me later. Whether or not I would have listened to it, I don't know. Right. I mean, if I would have told myself, let's just go back to my college and my start of my NFL career, I've become convinced more and more that the main way that I can follow Jesus is to love people. And so I would tell myself to do a better job of loving people. Sometimes I got caught up too much in what was right and wrong, and so I would go back and tell myself, love people better. And I feel like I've grown in that area, and I still got places to go there, right, to grow. But and would I listen to it? I was a stupid, knuckleheaded kid. Probably not, but I would have wanted to.
Ken, thank you so much for being here.
Henry, my pleasure. Always an honor.
Well, that was fun. I really enjoyed talking to Ken, as I always do. Okay, so this was a long podcast, and here is the calendar for the next few weeks. It's packed. On Wednesday, April 17th, we have an athletic boosters meeting. On the 18th, there is the military ball. That is for students and their families, grades K through 5. Should be a really fun night. There's no school on the 19th. The Sugar Maple Festival is the 19th through the 21st. There is a Board of Education meeting work session on the 25th. That'll be at BCI, by the way. We have a 2-hour early dismissal on the 26th. Prom is on the 27th, and the annual mattress sale is on the 28th. That's enough, don't you think? Okay, join me next time. Like, follow, and subscribe. Leave a comment if you'd like, and thank you so much for listening. I know at the end of other podcasts you hear people mention editors, sound engineers, producers, writers, and all that. Well, that's all me. So I don't like saying my name over and over. Anyway, until next time, have a good day. And if it can't be a good day, make it a great one.